Let me start with the belief that a lot of you are carrying around, maybe without realizing. You have spent years afraid to sell your company stock because of the capital gains tax. And somewhere along the way, quietly assumed your heirs would inherit that same tax. Here's the thing. For a Bay Area tech household sitting on a position that is growing 5 or 10 times over, that assumption is usually wrong. And the gap between what you fear and what actually happens can run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's a piece of the tax code that almost nobody explains, so people it helps most. When you hold a highly appreciated asset until you die, the enormous built-in gain your family would otherwise at a tax law can simply vanish. And yet that same code quietly punishes a very common, very well-being move, which is handing that stock to your kids while you're still alive. But today, I'm going to walk through the step up in a basis of death, why gifting appreciated stock often backfires, point where a second and much larger tax shift, and the tool and the people you actually need to make a plan to hold together. Let's start with the mechanism. This is the one nobody names for you. When you die holding an appreciated asset, your heirs generally inherit it with the cost basis reset to its value on your debt. The technical term is a step-up in basis. The practical effect is that the gain that built up across your entire lifetime gets wiped clean for tax. Picture the RSUs you started collecting years ago at a tiny fraction of today's price, or the pre-IPO shares you exercised when the strike was almost nothing. If you sold that stock today, you would face a large long-term capital gains bill, plus the surtax of high Bay Area incomes. But if your heirs inherit it instead, they can often turn around and sell it the next day and owe little or no capital gains tax. Because their basis is the value on a day-to-day basis. And for a married couple in California, even better. Community property rules can step up the full value of a jointly held position when the first spouse dies, not just half. Depends on how your accounts are titled, so that is something to confirm, not assume. But the headline holds, for concentrated, deeply appreciated stock, holding it until death is one of the most tax-efficient outcomes available. Now here's where good intentions go silent. A lot of parents assume that giving appreciated stock to their kids while they're alive is a generous head start. And with highly appreciated shares, it often does the opposite. Hands the tax problem to the next generation instead of solve. Here is why. When you gift an asset, the person receiving it generally takes your cost basis along with it. This is called carry-out basis. So your child inherits not just the shares, but the entire holding. And when they eventually settle, they owe the capital gains tax that you were trying to avoid in the first place. Compare that to the step up they would have gotten by inheriting those shares at your death, and you can see how the gift quietly cost the family a lot. Now, there's also an annual amount you can give each person each year without filing a gift tax return or touching your larger lifetime exemption. That number changes periodically. Check the current one before you rely on it. The point here is not that gifting is bad, but if gifting appreciated stock specifically deserves a second look. Because the asset you feel best about giving away is very often the one your heirs would rather inherit. Okay, but there is a trap on the other side of this. You need to flag it. The step up creates a really tempting logic. If holding until death erases the gain, then why would I ever sell? And for a Bay Area tech household, that logic can be quietly dangerous. Step up your heirs might receive decades from now is worth very little. Single stock it applies to falls 70% for it. Concentrated position in one company carries a real risk of permanent loss and no tax benefit count. I've made the case before that holding a concentrated position is not a strategy, and that the share of your net worth tied up in your employer's stock deserves a heart. So the move is to hold both ideas at the same time. Trim the position down to a size so you can actually survive losing using a tax-aware techniques than ever before for selling concentrated stock. And then let a sensibly sized, long-held slice ride toward the stock. The estate benefit is a reason to be thoughtful about which shares you sell first. It is not a reason to bet your family's security on one tick. So far, everything I've talked about is income tax, the tax on the gain. There's a completely separate tax you need to understand, and it works on a different axis. That is the federal estate tax. The federal estate and gift tax system gives each person a large lifetime exemption. Below it, no federal estate tax is owed at all. Above it, the value of your estate can be taxed at a high rate before it ever reaches your heirs. Now, that exemption is generous today, but it is a moving target and it is scheduled to change. So treat the current figure as something to verify with a professional, not a settled fact. California, for its part, has no status or inheritance tax, though that too is worth confirming. And this is the axis where lifetime gifting flips from questionable to seriously useful. For a household whose equity is pushed at near or above that exemption, giving assets away during your life and letting the future appreciation grow outside of your estate can reduce the estate tax later on. That is a real trade-off against a step-up. And it is exactly the kind of two-variable problem that rewards a projection built around your actual numbers. For estates large enough to owe that estate tax, a very specific problem shows. Tax is generally due in cash within months, and a lot of that wealth may be locked up in stock the family does not want to dump under a deadline. Life insurance is one tool people use to supply that. Let me be clear about where I stand. I am a fee-only advisor. I do not sell insurance. I have no product in place. Think this is education, not a recommendation. The concept is that a policy can pay out cash to cover an estate tax, which lets your heirs keep the appreciated stock in its step-up instead of selling it in a hurry. If insurance does come up in your planning, here are the questions. Ask how the coverage is owned, because a policy owned the wrong way can actually get pulled back into your taxable estate and defeat its owner. Ask what it costs over time, how long the coverage lasts, and what happens if you sell. And ask whether you even need it, because a household comfortably below the exemption may. Those are questions for a fee-only advisor and an estate attorney to get, not for whoever is trying to sell you. And this brings me to the last, which is the part none of this works with that. The step up, the gifting strategy, the estate tax planning, all of it runs through legal documents. And drafting those documents is the work of a qualified estate attorney. It is not a do-it-yourself project. A will directs who receives what. A revocable living trust can keep your estate out of the slow public probate process that California is famous for. And it can hold your appreciated stock so it passes clean. For larger or more complex situations, there are other trust structures, but which one fits and how it is written are legal questions with real consequences if they are done wrong. That is the attorney's job. My job, to help you walk in the door knowing what to ask. There is one piece you can and should check yourself about: your beneficiary definition. Retirement accounts and a lot of brokerage accounts asked by beneficiary, not by your. And an out-of-date form can send assets to the wrong person, no matter what your documents. Your financial plan or legal documents have to point in the same direction. So here's the bottom line. That instinct to never sell your appreciated stock, it is right for the wrong reason. Holding a sensibly sized position until death can hand your heirs a clean step up and erase a lifetime of built-in gain. Gifting that same stock during your life often just passes the tax bill along with it. And above a certain size, the whole calculus shifts and lifetime giving and trust start to mount. So get your concentration risk under control first. Then let an estate attorney and a fee-only advisor turn the rest into documents actually. If you want to talk through your specific situation, the link to schedule a call is in the description. And if you haven't subscribed to Vested yet, my weekly newsletter for Bay Area tech professionals, the link for that is down there too. I'll see you next week.